everybody, I'm Mango Thunderslice, and today's video is SPX, Stock Market Mania, Tesla Battery Day, and Endemic Fraud as a system of commerce and government. Maybe I'll shorten that a little bit when it comes to the final edit, but just going to be talking a little bit about the stock market in 2020, what investment looks like in this current era, what is sort of the lay of the land as far as my perspective. And also examining today's, September 22nd. This is, I guess, Battery Day. I didn't even hear about this before, like a couple weeks ago. But apparently, for those who are kind of part of the Tesla cult, the Church of Elon Musk, it's this day when they, I guess, release a bunch of battery technology. Knowing Tesla more than actually technology, it'll be releasing conceptual technology, right? Technology that will exist in only a few years, as long as you put down your deposit today, right? And, it's all good. Tesla has made some very interesting and cool products. I respect the developments that they've brought into the marketplace. There's just the other side, right? And that's kind of the side that balances out that instinct to become part of the Tesla cult, which is the fact that it's come on the back of massive government bailouts, and the hype is always orders of magnitude greater than the actual reality. And as a result of that, and for other aspects we'll get into in a second, the stock market basically just gives them this insane valuation. They're literally valued more than the largest automakers in the world, even though they produce like less than 0.5% of the world's automobiles. And even in the electric vehicle market, especially in Europe now, a bunch of electric vehicle models have come out from some of the majors, Volkswagen. And, they're eating Tesla's lunch. It's not a given that they're going to be in command of the market, but they're given this valuation that is as if they are, they've already, cured cancer and basically eliminated poverty. It's like a multiple is basically the price of the stock, the total valuation of the money that people in, that divided by the amount of earnings of income in that entity, right? So if your stock price is valued at 100 million and you make 100 million in annual income, then basically you have a multiple of 1. If it's 200 valuation and 100 earnings, it's 2, and so on. So we're at an average stock market multiple right now of like in the mid to, actually I think it's in the 30s, right? It's in the high 20s to the low 30s. Imagine putting money in something and basically at a price that implies that it'll take you essentially 30 years. It'll take that company 30 years to actually fulfill the income on which it's based. And of course, Tesla doesn't actually produce profit. It is a money-losing enterprise, and the only way they can even manage to report profit is because of the suspension of generally accepted accounting principles. So, it's basically just magic on the back end, where you can report things as income that aren't actually income, and a bunch of chicanery and tomfoolery, if you will, goes on when you suspend generally accepted accounting principles. But that is the world that we live in now. Companies are not just allowed but encouraged to participate in sort of massive systemic fraud, as long as they do it within like the accepted system of fraud, which in very real sense the modern equity markets are exactly that. And it's funny because I was having a debate, a conversational argument with Joe Stewart, who I've debated a few times on this channel, for those who have been around for a minute. And it's funny because the people who are liberal and socialist minded, the socialists, right, the liberals who know what at least know what they're talking about to some degree and are willing to discuss it and argue it, they see fiat money as a necessary and good thing. It's the fifth plank of the Communist Manifesto that you will have a central bank and a central issuance of credit, right? So, but when we have all these wild market crashes and distortions as a result of funny money creation, because we've entrusted a single group that is not a government entity to create currency. I mean, not like it would be, all, biscuits and gravy if it was a government entity. But the point is that there's no actual direct oversight of this entity. It is essentially unaccountable in a very real sense, apart from the appointment of the Board of Governors by the President of the United States, and occasional, nominal, just, superficial oversight by Congress. But people have woken up a lot to this. This is the nature of the Ron Paul revolution that, I came up in, and the total divergence from neoconservatism of, recognizing a more basic human action understanding of economics, and not just this macro money magic and, this banker gobbledygook. And, it's like the people who make this world are not the people who basically, deal in strike prices and options and, collateralized, mortgages and debts and liability. There's the people who make this world are the people who are actually building things. And, I'm not willing to just, totally, shit on the banks, the banks themselves. I'll shit on the banksters, but the point is that the allocation of capital is a useful service, and it does take in a modern, global economy with, all these different technologies. It is a skill and a science and an art at times to basically, learn how to plan development through allocation of capital. And so investment is, a legitimate service, but we've come to the point where, finance has become an entire industry into itself, like manufacturing paper assets and paper liabilities is now basically, it's gone total overdrive. And again, the collateralized mortgages thing, as if you haven't watched The Big Short, please watch a movie called The Big Short. It will explain to you, you don't have to be an economist to witness what essentially was happening. I mean, it's a very interesting and easy to access portrayal of the money magic that led to the 2008 financial crash. And as many of you probably know, and most people aren't really even able to fathom in the slightest, is that none of the problems that led to 2008 and the financial crisis have been resolved. They've only been, we just put a big old Band-Aid on it and we kicked it into overdrive. And the solution, rather than letting the bad enterprises fail and have a liquidation process take place, what they did is they propped up the zombies, right? They all became just these blow-up balloons. And money just keeps getting pumped into the system. This is the quantitative easing, right? They're literally just increasing the money supply by fiat, essentially through, the process of bonds with the Treasury, and basically just creating this debt. And and now actually, because of COVID, actually the Treasury and the Fed are kind of joined at the hip, which would be alarming and is alarming, under certain circumstances. But, I would maintain that a government control in the hands of, the Trump administration is probably gives me more comfort than the idea of the Fed just going willy-nilly off on its own. Because if there is to be a system of fiat money, if there is to be a mechanism by which money can just be created, then it should be accountable to the taxpayer. It should be accountable to the constituents. And, perhaps for infrastructure projects, and basic development of site work for communities, I think that maybe there's a role for a sort of credit creation vehicle. But again, we can build anything. We don't need these things. Those are all basically just they're funny money made because they took all the real money. They took the gold and the silver, right? They FDR banned gold by the average person from holding gold. It was very common back then, and he banned it, and it was seized, and basically it was like a felony if you didn't hand it over. And so they got all the gold. And then basically they revalued by fiat the price of gold. So essentially, it's like you buy a token, and then the next day they tell you, okay, your token is only worth half as much now. Like, you'd be pretty pissed, right? Well, the people who were paying attention back then, which still was a lot of people, were very pissed. But then FDR also, repealed prohibition and gave back alcohol, and so everybody was, happy again, or at least happy enough to not think about the fact that they had just been robbed at gunpoint by their own government. And it is that's why I'm as much as I am a part of the cannabis industry, I'm also always vigilant and wary against the tendency. I know that they're going to try and do the same with cannabis on a federal level if we're given the option. If this was a Hillary Clinton presidency, we might have federally legal cannabis. I mean, but it would be given as a jingle the keys moment. It would be basically given at the same time something so much greater was taken. And that's what I want, this plant, which is created by God, to be accessible to the people of God. But I don't want the moral degeneracy that a lot of people associate with it, which doesn't have to be associated with it. It's associated with it because it's been forced to be a part of this underworld of all these other, real drugs and, real seedy behavior. And so it's like, it's a good kid in a bad family type thing, a foster child in a bad home. But it doesn't have to be that way. Like, cannabis is the good child. They shouldn't be in that environment. They should be, in the collection, in the house of, a godly family, because it is. And, that's how we should treat it as a civilization. It shouldn't be treated as a vice. It shouldn't have a vice tax. It should be treated as an herb, or, basically not even as a drug, because it's not a drug. The drugs they try and make from it are inferior to the plant itself. And I think that speaks volumes to the power of this universe and the life force and that electrical connectivity that just you can't replicate in just a chemical synthesized compound. And I think that that's analogous to the financial world that we're living in. Big Pharma is the biggest, most profitable industry in the entire world. They are the biggest lobbying force in Congress. They literally got immunity from criminal charges for any vaccine damages. They set up a government entity to pay out settlement claims for people who were injured by vaccines. And it's just amazing. Like, they're in qualified immunity that people, bitch about when it comes to the police. Who really has qualified immunity? It's the pharmaceutical companies and it's the banks. All right. Cops, in the past, again, when I was growing up, I was very, very anti-police, and I am open and amenable to examining the we and limits of qualified immunity for the police, because they should be accountable. They should. It's not like we have, to the extent that we put them into dangerous situations, we do have to make accommodation to realize that they're not necessarily committing crimes. Some of them are, of course, but when they shoot somebody who is engaged in harming another person or engaged in some other activity that needed to be stopped. And I'm in favor of decriminalizing most drugs. I'm not necessarily, only in the recognition that things aren't made better by criminalizing these things. We can criminalize sort of the trafficking, the illicit trafficking, without actually criminalizing the substance itself. But again, I'm always wary of the what people perceive to be moral degradation that comes along with this, because it's not necessarily worth it. That's just more band-aids. We want to have a society that gives people meaning, that they can access safely substances to accentuate their experience, as humans have since the dawn of time, right? It wasn't Pepsi or Kool-Aid that Jesus turned the water into. It was the good old vine, the good old wine. And I think that fermentation process has also in ancient times been associated with the force of God, of that transmutation that we can't even necessarily explain. We can describe it with our modern terms of chemistry, but we don't know why it happens. Like, again, explaining how something happens is very different than explaining why. And when you get to the why, everything appears to have this perfect purpose and meaning. And, the only thing that doesn't is basically the atheist communists who have basically been programmed and traumatized into thinking that there's no meaning and that there's no purpose. And so a large part of that is accentuated by the falsity in appearance and substance of the economic world in which they're engaged. I now see it through a different light. I see the growth underneath it. I see the transformation of reality. I see things getting better, not necessarily just this endless urban, wasteland and sprawl. And we can build communities that are attractive visually. We can build them that are sustainable in the total resource sense, not at all with carbon, but carbon is a resource as well. And, it's the ultimate resource. And when we can learn to merge the world of technology with the world of carbon and the organic and the biological, not in a transhumanist sense, but just as in a making, again, space-age technology and materials from agricultural sources, such as graphene from the bast fiber of the hemp plant. There's so many reasons why this plant has been demonized and kept down by the powers that be, and there's a reason that even the MK Ultra, basically, sex slaves that escaped from Hollywood, they say that they were encouraged to take virtually every drug except for cannabis. Right? Because all the other drugs basically lowered their vibration and kept them in a contained state. But cannabis would often be more problematic. It would have the potential to bring them out of their program, to let them kind of see that film in front of them, and to sort of in a meta-analysis sense, to examine one's own psychology and one's own systems of cognition. And so, which doesn't really bode well for mind control, right? If people are examining their own cognition on a analytical basic level like that, and also using their intuition and using both hemispheres of their brain, that's essentially what, when the endocannabinoid system is supplemented, that is essentially what appears to happen. And, I'm talking about the pure extracts and the pure flower. Forget all that, candy ass shit with the flavors. And, I'm not, there's lots of different segments of the cannabis market. And, basically, I guess, I align more with the old hippie types who are just looking for, I don't want my strain to sound like a cheesy dish or like some food item, like, or candies or something, like just what happened to the old names for cannabis. But anyway, tangent. The point is that there is a reset coming, one way or another. Either the one that they had planned for the New World Order, or an organic one that is induced by the population of Earth, by the Jedi, by us. And I think that we are close to that point. Again, they're going to try to take, what they've striven for, and they will have it for a time, in a sense, has been my long-time intuition, that they will achieve their global state, but it will be very short-lived, and it will basically soon collapse and be replaced by something that actually is representative of the people and a functioning decision-making body for global issues, which is a real need, right? With the existence of weapons such as nuclear atomic weapons and other scalar technologies which are not as publicly known, there is a need to have a global system of decision making, right? It doesn't have to have a wide scope, and it doesn't have to necessarily even have authority to bind the constituents. Something like the United Nations, but not as gay and not as corrupt and evil. But yeah, it's in the same sense we will have a global market, and it will be people will be able to come to a common access point, and I think that cryptocurrencies are really the opening to that world. I think that's really what we're looking at when it comes to decentralized, secure systems of information and value transfer. And I think it's again, they can use cryptocurrencies and central bank digital currencies to essentially control us all, and again, like, turn off our bank account, just like Eric Garcetti, the mayor of LA, threatened to turn off the power and water to those who are hosting parties in violation of COVID-19 social distancing rules. You know, they've craved for that power. The problem is they're so obvious, and they've telegraphed their moves for so long that we have had plenty of time at this point, and we've still got plenty of time given the current tactical outlook to implement those systems to mitigate their power. Like, again, being off-grid. Yeah, try and turn off my utilities. You can't, because I'm not even connected to your grid, right? You're going to have to, bring down an airstrike on me to take me out. And even then, well, I'm sure I'll have something figured out for that too, especially once you've got a fleet of airships, Tactical outlook changes quite a bit, doesn't it? But we'll see about that. That's a few years down the line, but, I don't need to telegraph my own moves that much, but at the same time, it's how you speak reality into existence. I do not fear any man because I can see through them. I can see everything that motivates them. I can see their entire past, present, and future, where they've been and where they're going. I may not be able to tell you all the details. I may not be what's her name? Chloe, Mama Chloe, who's that Jamaican psychic who used to be on the early morning television commercials, but it's going to be an interesting world. It's going to be chaotic, but I think the general arc is in greater negentropy, it's greater coherence, and that again is all because of the actions that we are taking and the input that we are making into the world. And so there's always a reason to be gold-pilled, if you will, beyond just being white-pilled, just beyond, being, seeing at least the positive that does exist. The difference of the gold pill is that you are literally transmuting not just the political realm, but all of full spectrum reality. And you are the uncorruptible substance that, is in alignment with the cosmic and fractal pattern of God. And so, yeah, that's it's battery day. We'll see what comes out. But, be always wary of people who are all about appearances. And the world of finance is filled with people who only care about appearances, right? It's just, press releases and, it's all just a bunch of bullshit. And it's not a world that people who respect meaning and people who have a meaningful purpose in their life, can really survive for very long. It breeds and it accentuates the people who are sociopaths and who will do anything to control and exploit others. And, it's, again, the mitosis of worlds is underway, and it's across all spectrum of reality, but it's really coming down to those who are awakened to this nature of the universe and of ourselves, and those who just have the black cube, the lead inside, the dead inside, and, only want to see the world burn because, well, they've got nothing better to do except play video games, maybe. But anyway, that's my video today. Hope you guys have a good one. I'll see you next time. Cheers.